What's up, y'all? This NBA season, every shot you take with Fanatics Sportsbook puts points on the board. Earn up to 10% fan cash on your bets, win or lose. So even if your bet misses, you're still scoring fan cash. Unlock the world of Fanatics with FanCash for exclusive rewards like authentic apparel, game tickets, and meeting legends at Fanatics events. Make the switch and turn every bet into a bucket with Fanatics Sportsbook. Winning hits different here.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Knicks Film School Pregame Show. My name is Andrew Claudio, and it is time to preview another Knicks matchup. This time on Tuesday night up in Boston against the Celtics. As was the case the last time the Knicks played the Celtics, the second game into the season. While this is a rematch of their playoff matchup from last year, it is not featuring the same cast of characters. The Celtics look very different. The Knicks will look a little different with no OG Anunoby, still resting and recovering from his hamstring injury. But the Knicks are rolling without Anunoby, currently on a 4-game winning streak. Now the 2 seed in the Eastern Conference, even though you know my rule, we do not look at standings until Christmas Day. But the Knicks are playing well. The Celtics are also playing well. Their resume, as we go through the notebook on the Celtics, they are 11-9 on the season, coming off a pretty good win against the Cleveland Cavaliers. They also just had 2 very good wins, ending the Detroit Pistons' long winning streak. The big bad Orlando Magic that Knicks fans are afraid of, they just beat the Magic. So that's apparently they are beatable according to other teams in the NBA. They have some good wins on the season. They have some bad losses. They lost to Utah and Little Brother across the river in Brooklyn. They've won 6 of their last 8, though. So this is a Celtics team that we go to Boston and they're playing well. So we'll see how this matchup goes. Some season-long stats for them. They're 4th in offensive rating, right behind the Knicks. They're 18th in defense on the season, 11th in net rating overall. Some things they're really good at. 1st in turnover percentage. They don't turn the ball over a lot. It's a Joe Mazzulla team, so they're getting a ton of shots up. 4th in field goal attempts per game. It's a Joe Mazzulla team, so they're getting a lot of 3-point shots up. 3rd in 3-point attempts per game. And then on the defensive side of the ball, they don't allow a ton of shots to go up. 2nd in opponent field goal attempts per game and 3rd in opponent field goal percentage, both behind the Knicks, by the way. So these defenses look similar in that sense. What they're not very good at is, I don't even know if this is good or bad, but they're last in pace. They have the slowest team by pace in the NBA. And they are last in defensive rebound percentage, which may lead to some offensive rebounds that the Knicks can take advantage of. They're not as efficient as they used to be, but they do have, a really good all-star in Jaylen Brown and a lot of good pieces around him that are having decent seasons. It's an interesting Celtics team to talk about that isn't the big bad Celtics of the past few years. So let's talk about them with the first-time guest of the Knicks Film School Pregame Show. Joining me now here to preview the Knicks versus the Celtics. You can see her in so many places around Boston. Celtics blog, CLNS, SB Nation, covering both the Celtics and the WNBA. Noa Dalzell, welcome to Knicks Film School.
Thanks so much for having me. How's it going?
It's going good. I have to start here, and I didn't preface that we would start here beforehand, but the last time that I had someone that was in the infamous Joe Mazzulla decided to scrimmage the reporters basketball game on the show, Jack gave me the full details, and I know you were his teammate for that matchup against the Celtics and their coaches. How often does that game get brought up around your work covering the Celtics? How much does it get reminded that you guys lost 57-4 or whatever the final score was?
I would say I've been asked about it maybe 300 times.
300. Okay, so I'm 301. Got it.
You might be 301. There's every podcast, or like I go to an away game, like I'm in Orlando for the first time. It's like the first thing people ask. Or like it's like my uncle being like, "What happened?" So there's the personal life and there's the other reporters, because it was so funny. It was funny because I think because it's Joe, it just went so viral. Whereas if it had been a normal coach, or not that Joe's not normal. No, actually,
no. He's a psycho. No, we nailed it. We talked about this last time. He is not normal.
I think just like it's Joe locking up Bobby Manning, my co-host, and it's like that's gonna be funny, So
yeah. I do have a bone to pick with Mr. Mazzulla. If you could pass this along, Jack's haircut looks fine. Like I texted Jack after that happened. That media scrum where Joe Mazzulla said, "Did you get a haircut? Did you actually pay for that haircut or whatever it was?" And I texted Jack, "Show me the haircut."
It was good.
He looks fine.
I didn't like to compliment, but I was like, "Listen, it was a good haircut."
Yeah.
What was funny was I don't know if you saw the follow up that like a week later Joe gets a haircut, and Jack hit him with the exact same. Oh, you got a haircut, anyways. Like didn't and he played it pretty well, so I was proud.
In an era where they say that journalism is dying, shout out to Jack for keeping it alive with the week later follow-up that was necessary. So bravo.
He wasn't going to let that story die.
Exactly. Friend of the pod, Jack Simone. The Boston Celtics, their coach may be a psycho, but their team seems kind of normal to what I thought they would be to start the season. I thought this was a team that you were going to look at and they would hover around 40 wins. There's the Jason Tatum conversation. I don't even know if we need to have it, but it's one that is out there about whether he could potentially contribute later on in the season. The mood in Boston. I read through the resume before we brought you on, and look, it's not championship expectations, but I'm sure there were some expectations on this season. How are the Celtics? Let's start there, not their fans. How is the building of the Boston Celtics? How do they feel about their 11-9 start?
Honestly, I think they feel pretty good. And, I had them winning 45 games this year. So right now they're like perfectly on pace to do that. But even still, I feel like they've exceeded my expectations, even though the win total is kind of like where it was supposed to be, because you're getting a lot out of a lot of players. And that was the big question mark entering the season of like, is Jordan Walsh an NBA player? Is Baylor Sherman an NBA player? Is Nemias Queta an NBA center? Like we didn't know, all these guys, they were more ideas than anything else. And for the most part, you've seen guys really step into the roles that the team had hoped they would step into. And if it wasn't for a couple of like bad crunch time games and the fact that Peyton Pritchard and Derek White started the season shooting horribly from three and from the field, and they're both kind of regressing back to the mean right now, I think this team would have an even better record than they have. Like they've been a top 5 offense, which is mind blowing. I would never would have guessed that. They've been a pretty middle of the road defense, but they've been really good at turning the ball over for opposing teams. So there's been a lot of good things. And I think the general feeling has been that there's a ton of buy-in and the team's very together, and what Joe Mazzulla is selling, guys are buying. And that's like the biggest thing that you just weren't sure because it was a completely different group.
Yeah, the regression to the mean for a lot of 3-point shooters is something. It's actually something I've had on multiple pods recently, between Des Bane now not looking like a 20% 3-point shooter. Emmanuel quickly got off to a horrific start at like 7%. He's now at 35, 36%. Even like here in our world, Karl-Anthony Towns, self-proclaimed greatest shooter of all time, was shooting around 31% from 3, and that started to trickle up. Even though it's not like where you want it to be, it's started to look better. To your point, Derek White is now, weird to say this, up to 31.7% from 3 on the season, and Peyton Pritchard is at 34%. How real or fake is a weird way to probably ask it, but how much of the 18th in defensive rating should I take stock in? Is this a work in progress on defense? Is this like trending toward a good defense? Is this probably a below average defense? How would you grade them on that end of the floor?
It's an above average first shot defense. And there's been some defensive rebounding issues that I think have hurt their standings in that regard. They are a very good defense when Nemias Queta is playing, and they are a not very good defense when he is sitting. And he has been playing around 30 minutes a game, and he's missed 2 of the last 3 games, which hasn't helped. So they're actually very hard to score against, like at the half court when they're all set up, especially right now. Like they have Jordan Walsh in the starting lineup. They've been using Hugo Gonzalez off the bench. Josh Minot's been good. So they have like these young guys that can really guard, that they haven't necessarily had like that kind of youth on the floor in previous years. And they've fouled a ton, but they've also drawn, created a lot of steals and opportunities like that. So I think they're okay with that trade-off. But the single biggest indicator of this team's defensive abilities is whether Kata's on the floor or not. Like when he is off the floor, they either have to go small or they have to rely on somebody that's a much worse defender, whether that's Luka Garza or whether that's Amari Williams or two-way center who was in Maine up until a week ago. Like they don't really have somebody that does anything that what Kata does. Like he is their rim protector.
And I guess we should mention the most recent game they played against the Cavs. Neither Kata nor Derek White played in that game. I guess now I have to ask the reporter on behalf of Knicks fans potentially worried about a Derek White 8-3 game that he seems to only have against the New York Knicks.
Every fan base feels that way, by the way. Everybody's like, Derek White only plays well against us. That's
right.
What I hear.
To complete the main character syndrome, I fully expect that he missed the last game against the Celtics, that way he could play in this game against the Knicks. But to anyone wondering how their status will be or what their status will be for this game in Boston, do you think they'll both play or will they both sit? Okay.
I think they're both going to play. Kata said that he was 100% or like nearing 100% after the first night of the back-to-back. So I think his ankle injury is healed. It's more just injury management for a 7-footer who sprained their ankle a week ago to not play on a back-to-back traveling. They got in at like 2 a.m. to Cleveland. And then Derek, from what Joe Mazzulla said pregame yesterday, it's not like a long-term thing. I think this was honestly just like a rest game for him. And he does have like a calf contusion, but I don't think it's anything that would hold him out. So they have a day of rest here. I expect them to be fully available to go on Tuesday.
So then I also, in previewing this game on behalf of Knicks fans, I just spoke about their offensive rebounding issues specifically. I guess no, their defensive rebounding issues, but the Knicks being a good team when it comes to the offensive glass. I automatically go into that saying, okay, Mitchell Robinson, Josh Hart's now starting, like Karl-Anthony Towns is big. Even though he's not the greatest offensive rebounder, you still have to contend with him. I look at that as an obvious strength. The Knicks also give up a ton of threes. I think they're one of the 5 worst in the NBA in 3-point percentage against. So, like going into this matchup, I think on behalf of Knicks fans, it's a bit concerning that you face an offense like this that scores the way they do. When it's looked the best, are the Celtics a team still, I guess, that could take advantage of a Knicks defense that just can be beaten if you get a ton of threes up?
Yeah, I think at their best for sure. And that was the vision that I had for the Celtics team entering the season is Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, like those are 3 of the best shooters out there. And they just haven't looked like it this year. So it's trending upward, especially Peyton over the last 10 or so games. He's shooting like 42% from 3 or something in that range. Derek's been trending upwards a little bit as well. Sam's been in a massive shooting slump, which has been unfortunate because that's obviously his game. But absolutely, I think they can take advantage of that. I mean, Peyton's coming off a 42-point night where he was the Celtics offense against the Cavs. But the rebounding issues are going to be real. And like the biggest memory I have from like the almost feeling like the lowest moment from the Celtics early season is at Madison Square Garden, the second game of the year. And like, obviously we all know that the Knicks held a sizable lead in most of that game, but they seemed literally incapable of rebounding in that game. I remember thinking to myself, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to write 82 stories about rebounding this season because it felt so insurmountable. And they're better now. Like, I think individual guys have really kind of prioritized that, starting with Kata and Jaylen Brown, who I think were 2 of the guys who found themselves being rebounded over quite a bit in that Knicks game. But it's never going to be a strength of this team, especially because they're constantly going small. I mean, they were playing the Pistons and like going up against like Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart, and they had like Jalen playing the 5 and Sam Hauser playing the 4. Like they've just accepted that is a part of their identity, and I think they've found advantages too on the offensive end when they're kind of going that small. But yeah, the rebounding issues, I think it will continue to be a theme. And this Knicks game I've had circled of like, this will be a good litmus test to see how much progress they've actually made in the last 5 weeks.
Well, when teams have gone small against the Knicks, it's then they take advantage in transition. Like
right.
When the Knicks are going to their double bigs or playing Cat next to Josh Hart, not Cat next to Mitch, of course, but like you put Josh Hart on the floor and you try to take advantage of the possession battle, teams get out on the run. Like that's how the Raptors last night got back into the game in the second quarter. Some streaky shooting also helped, both the Raptors hitting everything and the Knicks hitting nothing in the second quarter. But like by the fourth quarter, the Knicks were able to turn it into an advantage when they had Mitch and Cat on the floor and won the game that way. I guess when you look at a Celtics team that doesn't run, at least by pace, doesn't seem to be a team that takes advantage in transition. Like, is it just a shooting thing that they take advantage of teams when they go to just putting 5 shooters on the floor, even if none of them are that tall?
Yeah, that's part of it. I mean, one of the big things they did well in that Detroit game is that Joe Mazzulla is like, I don't know if you've heard about the whole killer whale offense thing that Joe has preached. And basically their offensive philosophy, which I don't think is unique, but they just call it this, is hunting the worst defender on the floor. And effectively, like, if there's any sort of weakness in the opposing team's defense, they just go at it. And honestly, at times it's kind of a tough watch. Like, there were so many moments last year where I was like, I just don't want to see Kristaps Porzingis do a weird post up on Karl-Anthony again or whatever else it was. Like, and then because he was like, could not play in that playoffs run. But that's what they do, is they hunt mismatches. And right now, the guys that are hunting those are playing exceptionally well. Like Jaylen Brown, you don't want to get a mismatch on him, right? You don't want him to get Jaylen Brown. Like, he has been scoring so well, mid ranges, driving to the basket, everything. And so I think when they have 5 scores or 5, they have a little bit more advantages on that end that they can create. And in that Pistons game, I mean, they literally scored on Duncan Robinson like 9 times down the stretch. And so as long as you have one poor defender or below average defender, they've really made opponents pay with that. I would imagine in this case, it's probably Jalen Brunson. I don't know. I mean, you obviously watch him play more than I do. Is he like how much of a defensive liability is he? Obviously, he's not like a Mikal Bridges or an OG Anunoby, but like, is he somebody that is really a liability?
Yes, but only in the sense of like, you're never going to get like a Jalen effort issue. Like, it's not for lack of effort.
That's like Peyton Pritchard, same idea.
Especially when you put him into actions, he's really good at drawing the offensive foul on the pick. And some might call it flopping. I call it Brunsoning. Like, you might get Brunson.
It's a little bit of a flop, but it's respect. Yeah.
Shout out to my buddy Benji Ritholtz, who has literally coined the term. Like, when he draws one of those offensive fouls, he says, "You have been Brunsoned." So that's the way that he's able to counteract that a little bit. I think the fact that he's 6 feet tall, like a big wing like a Jaylen Brown, like anybody else, even some of the smaller wings like Maxey or Halliburton, they will go target Jalen Brunson. I think he at least will try to hold his own. Gotta be honest, the place I think they would find more success would be Karl-Anthony Towns, which is why I think Mike Brown has done a good job this year of, like, if both of them are on the floor together, we're getting out in and running. We're making sure the offense is dynamic. We're putting like 5 shooters on the floor with Cat. Josh Hart's also been a shooter this year, which has helped developments that you're not just, teams are putting their center on Josh Hart, but he's making them pay this season. So yeah, I look, when I hear the killer whale style defense or offense, I immediately like, okay, so they're going to go target Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns throughout the game, which I think the Knicks, if their path to winning is obviously to hit your shots, but it's going to be on the boards more so, which I think that, like you said, that's a thing we thought would be an Achilles heel for the Celtics for most of the season, which I guess to counter, I think the job Mike Brown has this year is, how are you going to make a defense work with Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns? This is literally their Achilles heel too. So we'll see.
To their credit, I went into the Celtics-Knicks series last year thinking, how are the Knicks going to stop the Celtics? This dynamic offense with all these players and Tatum and Brown and Holiday, and they have these 2 liabilities on the floor, and they made it work. So I do think that I don't have the same view of them as I would have prior to that series, where it looked like they do have like two pretty substantial liabilities. I was thinking like, okay, that pick and roll, get those 2 guys going. Like, there's going to be a lot of things you're going to hunt there. And that didn't really play out the way that we had anticipated, I think.
They also switched everything for like, the first time all season. And look, I will forever remember that Celtics series as a Knicks fan for the euphoria of game 1 and 2. It was also the bewilderment that I'm sure Celtics fans had too, of like, how did that happen? Like, so the path to victory is go down 20 and hope they start missing. Like, it wasn't, I give the Knicks credit for coming back in both games. I understand the path that it took to come back in both games. But yeah, it's where I can't leave that series and say they dominated the series and it took a blowout win without Jason Tatum in game 5 to outscore the Celtics in the series. But how often, just to fully talk about the conference semis and then move on from it, how often does that get brought up in like your day-to-day around the Celtics? Or did it get brought up of like, man, I can't believe we lost that Knicks series?
I think there is that sentiment. I would say probably Jaylen Brown holds it most because he is the guy that was there that is still here, but there's just that team was just a different team. You look at Tatum, obviously, like the Achilles injury, he's not around, but Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, Al Horford, Luke Cornett, like 4 of their 7 rotation players from last year are not on the roster. So it's not like I know there was this whole story with Tom Thibodeau being at practice this year, or Celtics practice, and everybody kind of freaked out. And I think there was a little bit of truth to the idea that like maybe he was going a little bit behind the scenes, but it was probably a little overreacted on social media of like he's giving up all the secrets,
That never happens. Overreaction on social media.
Right.
Yeah.
But Jaylen, to his credit, or like to be fair here, Jaylen Brown was asked about that, and he was thrilled to be able to say that Tom Thibodeau is in the house. And he how sometimes players don't want to talk about something, and sometimes they're so glad you asked, and in this case, I think he was glad because he's a little salty about that series still. And I think, you look at, nobody expected that to happen. You blow 20-point leads. That Celtics team felt like they were primed for a title repeat, and they lose in the second round to a Knicks team they went 4-0 against during the season. Like, it's going to take a long time to recover from that. But if it was the same exact group, I think it'd be coming up all the time. But instead, it's like we have a bunch of unproven NBA players that are figuring out whether they're NBA players. And that's kind of been more the story of the season.
If I can pick your brain, because I know you covered that series, like, were you in New York for any of the games?
I was at all the games, yeah.
So you were at all the games. So, like, what was the locker room? Not to just fully go through game 1 and 2, but like, how did it progress throughout the series in both bewilderment, devastation after game 4 with Tatum going down, and then like when it was over? Like, what was your vantage point of that series?
To be honest with you, after games 1 and 2, both of those games, I was like, I don't even want to go into this locker room because this, like, I like, as a reporter, I was like, my hands were like shaking, just like seeing everything that had just happened. I was like, how are these guys going to like talk to us now? But they were very cool after those 2 games. And I remember we had a practice after the 2 games where Tatum was like, I haven't been good, I have to do better. And everybody was like, we're going to turn it around. Like, we're primed to turn it around. And I really think they believed that. There was no like panic after those 2 games. And then they come out and win game 3 pretty handily. And I remember thinking, okay, maybe they're just going to come off and rattle 4 straight here. And that two blown leads will just be kind of a blip in their playoff run. And obviously that doesn't happen. And I think as soon as Tatum goes down, it became more about that than anything else. Like, I remember after game 4, we were talking to Al Horford in the locker room. That was the worst locker room, obviously, that I've ever been a part of, because 1, they're now down 3-1 against the team they thought they were going to beat. But then also everybody knew immediately that Tatum had ruptured his Achilles, and he has a lot of good friends on the team. And just from a personal level, I think it was like his mom was in the locker room. Everybody, it was just very dramatic. And I remember we asked Al Horford about the game, and he was like, I don't really care about the game right now. Like, Tatum just went down. And I also think, I remember in that moment thinking he may have just played his last series as a Celtic, because you could see in his eyes that it all flashed kind of across him that this team was not going to be the same moving forward, and that era had kind of come to an end. So it was weird because on one hand, like, it was a disappointing series loss, but it represented a lot more. So I think sometimes like the actual games got lost in the emotional reaction of the players. Like, we knew right away that like half the team was going to get traded in the offseason. And like, I remember seeing like Sam Hauser sitting against his locker, and I was like, he might get traded. Like, it was just a matter of who it was going to be. And, obviously it was a lot of guys that got traded pretty quickly after that series. But as far as like Joe Mazzulla and things, like, I don't think the players and coaches, or at least coaches, are like us, and that like we all were like, okay, the Celtics are going to win the series, and it's kind of hard to picture another way. Like, I think Joe understood that they almost lost that Pacers series. He talks about it all the time the year prior, where they swept the Pacers, but they literally almost lost. And so I think he views everything as like the margins are so thin. And so he wasn't stunned after that series, but he did go back to the drawing board. And I think part of why they're more athletic and younger and are just have a different identities, because he didn't view it as like a fluke loss either. I think he viewed it as, we need to kind of change some things. And obviously they had to because of the second apron, but also identity wise, they are a very different basketball team right now.
Yeah, I did 2 pods with Jack during that playoff run. Did one before and did one after. And he had mentioned that the last dance feel that some of that series, that season, that postseason was going to be for the Celtics because of the second apron, because of the ownership change, because it just was very clear that this group was not going to be together. And then in talking to him after, he said a lot of what you said about that Game 4 locker room. And I made the case that it's not the worst loss in Celtics history. We'll talk about that when we get to that game a little later. But like, it might be in quantity the most they've lost in a single series, both in terms of how big the upset was to the Knicks and what the Vegas odd makers were making of that series. The Knicks weren't favored to win the series until after Game 4. And I'm not sure if they even if they were up 3-1 with a healthy Tatum, that they would have been favored to win that series. I still think people would have expected the Celtics to come back and win with 2 home games still on the docket. You add in losing Tatum, you add in about the run being over, and then the New York-Boston of it all also, adds to the narrative. It's why expectations are a fickle thing, because you go into this season with, like you said, a 45-win team. And I think some Celtics fans might even say that's optimistic.
Yeah, for sure.
If I could ask you, on behalf of Celtics fans, what does a disappointing season look like to the Celtics? Does it matter wins and losses? Is it roster curiosity based? Is it record based? Is it Tatum playing? What do you think Celtics fans will be disappointed by this season?
Well, there's 2 factions of Celtics fans right now. There's the pro tank fans, and there's the fans that want to see this team field as competitive as a team as possible and showcase development and all of that. Obviously, from a reporter standpoint, who I cover every game, maybe it's in their best interest to tank this year, but I don't want to cover a tanking basketball team. So my hope has been that they would be competitive and that the individual games would matter, right? And sometimes fans get on me about this, but I'm like, hey, if you were flying to a game and then the game literally didn't matter and they were resting everybody, you'd also be like, this is a waste of time, right?
Right.
I think the big picture is everybody wants to see that some of these young guys that have really shown nothing in their first few seasons have some potential. And people were already saying Brad Stevens can't draft because obviously he didn't draft Tatum and Brown, but he drafted Jordan Walsh and Baylor Shireman, and neither of those guys played in their first couple seasons. And Nkata has been around for a bit, but he was their 4th center last year, was not in their playoff rotation, was hardly in their regular season rotation. So I think there was a big question around, can we get some pieces for the future? Because when Tatum comes back, who's left, right? You don't have all the players that he played with. So could you spend this year developing those young talents, those young players? And for the most part, I think it's been pretty successful in that regard. So if you're somebody that's thinking for the future, you like what you've seen. And then there's a couple other big picture things that I think people were anticipating. One is, what does Jaylen Brown look like as a number 1 player? He wins a final MVP. He was an all-NBA player, 2 years ago. And even still, he has a lot of detractors and a lot of people who just view him as he's the beneficiary of playing alongside Jason Tatum. And as a number 1 option, he's just not going to be good. And I heard that all summer. That they should trade him now while people might think he's still good, because this year it's really going to expose him and he's not going to be able to score against good defenses, and he's not going to be able to attract the kind of attention that Tatum was able to attract. And it's only 20 games and long season, but I think he's pretty much shut that conversation down because he has played exceptionally well. This has been the best season of his career. He's scoring the ball well. Last night he had a triple-double, and he's just done a lot of everything. So big picture, I think fans wanted to see, how does Jaylen Brown look in this position? Can Peyton Pritchard be a starting guard? There were a lot of questions because everybody's kind of shifting up a little bit. So that is probably more important to most fans than their overall record. And then the Joe Mazzulla piece of a lot of people are like, oh, Joe Mazzulla is a super team merchant, right? He came into the season and he was stepped into this role and coached a championship a year later because he had the best roster in the NBA. I think fans generally feel a lot better about Joe right now than they did in the offseason when he was extended, because he is getting the most out of this group. And so that's the stuff that I think fans care about. That's what matters long term. Obviously, I think people that are watching games night to night basis, they want to see wins. And you see the emotions of the fan base go up and down depending on what happened last night. But big picture, I think the developments that you would care about as far as can this team return to championship contention in the next couple of years, there's been a lot of positive indicators from the first 20 games here.
Yeah, my buddy Bryce Simon over at the Pistons Pulse over in Detroit, and of course Game Theory with Sam Vecini, he coined the frame data collection a lot throughout last year's Pistons season. That the way you have a positive Pistons season isn't just making the playoffs. I need to learn about this roster. I need to know what Jalen Duren is, what Cade is, in year whatever it was for him last year. Finding out about some of these younger players like Asar and Ivy and Ron Holland, and obviously the Pistons had like positive returns in their data collection, and then look what they're having this season. I almost wonder if this is a data collection season for the Celtics too.
For sure.
In this sense, especially like you mentioned Mazzulla, I like the Knicks always had no champion. They didn't have real championship expectations until the very end of Tibbs, but you saw the value of Thibodeau in building his floor early on in his tenure. And, a team with Reggie Bullock and Elfrid Payton and Nerlens Noel and like all these guys playing very big, and a bunch like rookie RJ Barrett or second year RJ Barrett, rookie Emmanuel Quickley, and rookie Obi Toppin gets the 4th seed. And it's like, all right, I know that information about my coach. When you don't give him like superstar, like you said, the super team, you know what you have. And I think seeing Mazzulla reinvent an offense, and we'll see what happens with the defense this season. It can gather information about your coach to know what your floor is with them after you've already explored the ceiling. So I wonder if that's like what the direction is for the Celtics this year. If I could ask you about the Knicks, I stopped asking what do you think about their championship expectations, because everybody's like, yeah, they're one of the top 4 teams that could win. I think that's a mentality change a lot of Knicks fans are trying to get used to, that every Vegas book, shout out to our friends at Fanatics Sportsbook, has them listed as like a top 5 team to win the title. Let me ask you, in your opinion, if the Knicks don't win the title, it will be because why?
That's a good question.
Be as brutally honest as possible.
Yeah.
You could say their defense. You could say like because OKC exists. Like you could say that.
I mean, honestly, probably because it's hard. It's really just hard to picture anybody beating Oklahoma City right now. That's the number one thing. But if I were to answer your question less literally of like, maybe they don't even make the finals, like what's the reason for that? It probably is on paper, the fact that they have 2 key players that have to be on the floor in key moments that are somewhat of defensive liabilities. And like 10 years ago, that wouldn't have been in my mind. But I think the way the league has evolved is like, there's just no liabilities on the floor. And in a lot of teams, like you look at the Thunder, it's like they have 5 all defense defenders sometimes out there. Right.
Yeah.
And so on paper, that's a challenge. And then there's the reality. And I know Knicks fans are not going to want to hear this, and I don't even really think this, but it's really hard to win with your number 1 being a 6-foot guard. And that's a reality that I think has loomed over this Knicks team. And I think Jaylen Brunson is an MVP candidate. I think he's had an awesome season. And I would like to cover a league where a 6-foot guard can be your best player in a finals MVP. I think that's more fun than just having big wings and post players dominate. But at a certain point, like that is a challenge, right? We've talked about how Steph Curry's been like one of the only exceptions to that in recent history. So I believe in Jaylen Brunson's ability to do that, but I think that poses, the deeper you go into the playoffs, the more that poses a challenge. But I do like this team. I think they're going to come out of the East. I don't see another team that I feel more confident in, at least right now through the first quarter of the season. But it's really hard to picture the Thunder losing. Like something terrible has to happen to them. It's just been like so ridiculous how dominant they've been through 20 games.
I'm not wishing anything bad on the Thunder, to be clear. I guess it's like history has always been the thing that guides me with this. And I'm literally talking to someone that covered that Celtics series last year. We have not seen a team repeat as conference champions, let alone as NBA champions since
7 years, right?
Since the Warriors built that ridiculous thing that nobody could beat. Now, the counter to history, or I guess maybe history guiding me here, is that maybe the Thunder have built another ridiculous thing that nobody could beat just on the defensive end. I would like to see them against Denver again, or at least in like, I think that's going to be my conference finals. Like, I know what Houston is. I think this Lakers thing is fascinating. I think it comes down to Denver or OKC, and that was a Lou Dort fourth quarter away from being 3-2 Denver going back to Denver for Game 6. So that's where I'm at as far as OKC potentially repeating.
They just look so much better this year than they did last year.
They're 19-1, and Jalen Williams has played like 3 games. Like I can't fully. I don't have a good argument against OKC. Crazy things can happen in the playoffs. I guess
that's the thing. And like
against.
And if you had told me that the Celtics playoffs would have ended with Jaylen Brown needing meniscus surgery, Jason Tatum rupturing his Achilles, and Porzingis having POTS and being able to run up and down the court. Like, it was hard to picture them looking the way they did in that second round, but also like crazy things happen. And it does feel like there's a curse when you win the title. Like, it feels like the next year you were up against that curse. So we'll see. But again, like, the next thing about OKC being in the other conference is that there's other teams that can kill them, right? Like, you might not even have to face them. Yeah. And so if I'm a Knicks coach, I'm not even thinking about Oklahoma City right now, right? Like, you have to stay focused on the Eastern Conference. And the Eastern Conference does not seem formidable at all to me right now. I mean, we're talking about the Cavs and the Pistons being two of the teams that I think have looked the best this season. The shorthanded, no Neemias Queta rebuild Celtics just beat them both in the last week, right? So I don't know that I feel that concerned about either of those teams. The Knicks are the only team so far, so to me, that seem like they are playing on a different playing field. Though I know the Pistons have been good, but just like having been there on Wednesday, it seems like that team is still a piece away or a year away or not quite there at championship contention level.
Right. A second offensive creator, I think, is what a lot of people have like fake traded them to have. Yeah. You know, I think
I like that fake traded. Yeah.
I just like the Lauri Markkanen fake trades that all have him landing in Detroit. It's like, okay, so that's the team you're going to trade him to. Got it. I'm sure that they will be in if Danny Ainge decides to trade him. I'm fascinated that you didn't say Orlando. And I think if you ask any Knicks fan right now, their boogeyman is the Orlando Magic. Not because like we can't beat the Magic. They just play such a physical style defense that takes the Knicks out of this new offense and forces them back into playing like one-on-one. I thought they actually played really well in their last game. It's just by the fourth quarter, Mitchell Robinson was sick or just wasn't playing well. And then it turned out he was sick. Houston McBride didn't play. Landry Shamet had popped his shoulder. So they were just missing NBA bodies at that point. But I think a lot of Knicks fans are afraid. Afraid is not the term to use. Concerned about a series against Orlando. And the Celtics have beat Orlando twice. So there's just no mention of like, oh yeah, why would you be concerned about the Magic? Just like outscore them. They don't really have that great an offense. And that's why I think come playoff, we'll see, you know, the styles make fights of the Knicks being more finesse and the Pistons and the Magic being more based on physicality, like an old school Knicks team. We'll see which eventually wins out.
Part of my confidence in the Knicks, though, is that it feels like they have a margin of error of like, Mikal Bridges could miss a series and they still have other wings that can do what he does. And like, obviously you want to have your full team available, but to me, it feels like you could miss a guy for a couple of games and you still have a lot of talent left. Whereas some of these teams, it's like Franz Wagner goes down. Like, I don't know, they don't really have enough. Like the Celtics right now, in theory, if they're down a player or two, it feels like they don't have anything left, but sometimes that can be a fool's gold. Like last year with the Celtics, you would have thought they had that margin of error and they didn't have it. So you never know.
Yeah. I didn't mean to laugh at you because I agree with the sentiment. I agree with the point.
I know he's never going to. I know.
Bridges misses a series.
Well, I picked him because I don't want to curse one of these guys that's always injured. So.
Well, so they're literally succeeding right now without OG Anunoby, who's missing time, been more injury prone. I'm just going to go on record. If Mikal Bridges is missing a basketball game, it's because something happening in an apocalyptic level to the NBA. So like everybody's missing a game too. Yeah, that's more. It's why I've come to the conclusion he's going to play every game the rest of his career, even if it means
I'm knocking on wood. This feels like we're cursing him.
So if he gets injured in the Celtics game, it's my fault, Knicks fans. I've come to he played a whole season.
You said it at the 38 minute mark. I'll go back to this.
There we go. You can bookmark it, timestamp it, whatever. He played a full season under Tom Thibodeau. He has survived everything in this NBA. I think he'll be okay. 2 questions before I let you get out of here. Loaded question, but I can't ignore what the workout videos look like. Jason Tatum will play how many games for the Celtics this year?
Question. 15.
Okay. And they will be like high leverage and he'll also play
like
playoff
minutes
games?
Restriction.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so hard. Like I change my mind about this like every hour, but I think he's going to try to get in at the buzzer. I don't think it's going to be like first team All-NBA Jason Tatum is scoring 30 a night, but I think he's going to try to get some reps this season. Psychologically, it seems like that's what he's going for. And it may come down to at a certain point, like Jason, it'd be better for you if you took the summer and came out strong, full health next year. But I don't know. I think I'm the last reporter to have spoken to him. I spoke to him about a month and a month ago. And I was like, is that still your goal? And he was like, yep. So I'm going to just take his word for it. And he looks good shooting around and doing things.
When you spoke to him, was it like, I just want to get back on the court and prove I can play the following season? Or was there anything about like the playoffs or aspirations in there as well?
No, I think right now it's like so hard to know, especially then it was so hard to know if this team is going to be like tanking at that point or if they're going to be a 5th seed. But I don't know that that's going to have much of an impact. Like it's going to come down to whether if he's cleared and he feels good, I think they're just going to roll with him because his goal, and he said this before, I don't know what date is, but he has a date on the calendar for this season that he wants to be ready to go by. And so he has it circled. It's a home game. We don't know which home game it is. I think it's going to be like March or April. But I think he's aiming for that as a milestone, because if you think about it, like it's December right now. If you think you're still 11 months away or 10 months away from playing an NBA game, that's tough. Right. And so it might be something that's not realistic, but psychologically, he's just kind of like trying to make that a point.
Yeah. Look, it'd be an accomplishment if he came back that quick. I obviously worry about him coming back too soon, coming back and re-injuring, but I'm going to assume the Celtics and their medical staff have a plan in place. And even if it is like he's just a super sixth man playing 20 to 25 minutes, I think it'll be an interesting story if and when he eventually plays. Last question before I let you go. And I've been asking everybody this. I'm curious if your answer becomes the same as Jack's. But that game is a phenomenon that Celtics legend, I'll say it, Bill Simmons once said, describing that one devastating loss that every fan has felt, that you just have to say that game and every fan knows what you're talking about. The Knicks are fresh off of that game for me in the conference finals against the Indiana Pacers. Game 1 featuring a 14-point lead that was blown with 2.5 minutes left. What do you think is that game in your experience? Not like what the old heads would say about like losing to Magic and Kareem in game 6 in Boston. Like, what in your opinion is that game for the Boston Celtics?
Yeah. So in totality of like my time following this team, pre-reporting, but when I was a fan, would be 2010 finals, game 7. Like you lose in the finals in a game 7. I think that has to be the game. And coming down to the wire, and that Celtics team, that big 3 that everybody always talks about, like they should have won more titles. And I feel like everybody feels that way. So that would have been the one. But that to me feels like ancient times. So more recently, like that game 7 against Miami, I was in the building for that one. You come back from being down 0-3. You have this Derek White putback layup that should have become an all-time moment in franchise history. And then Tatum rolls his ankle on the first play. Jaylen Brown plays one of the worst games of his career. And you're humiliated on your home floor against Miami. And I would say that game is what fueled the title run and what fueled Jaylen Brown's bounce back year the following year. So it does kind of have like a full circle feel for Celtics fans. But at the time, I think they were stunned. They thought that they were going to pull off something that had never been done before. They were going to go to the finals and rectify the previous year's loss. And instead they lose by 25 to Caleb Martin, like 25-point game. And I don't think he scored 25 points all season, it feels like. So that would be the one that stands out more from recent history.
Listen, as a Knicks fan whose team lost the series previous to Miami and also saw Max Strus and Gabe Vincent and Caleb Martin and Duncan Robinson all discover their shot in that series as the Knicks were just continuing to double Jimmy Butler, a hobbled Jimmy Butler after game 1 for 6 games. It was very frustrating to watch Caleb Martin, but I will say a little cathartic to see him do it to another team. So it wasn't just us.
Yeah.
I think the lesson that a lot of Knicks fans are learning recently with the last 3 shows that I've done, where the Knicks play the Raptors, the Knicks played the Bucks, and now they're playing the Celtics. When I've asked this question, there's been the benefit of, but then we won a title. Like the Raptors won a title after all those LeBron that games. But then the following season, they win a title. And then that game is the game 7 in the bubble that they lost to the Celtics, the Marcus Smart block at the end of the game. You can erase the memory of that game or the severity of the pain of that game by just going and winning the title. So I hope the Knicks do the exact same.
For sure.
I guess the Celtics did. And
it makes it sweeter ultimately to have that.
it becomes part of the journey that it's like, hey, we
Yeah.
had to overcome that loss to experience this championship. So we'll see if they actually get it done. Noah, this was great. Thank you so much for joining me here for another edition of the Knicks Film School Pregame Pod. Before you get out of here, the many hats that you wear, where can everybody find all of your work?
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. You can find my work on CLNS Media. We do a post-game show after every Celtics game. We actually have some Knicks fans that joined our show last year during that series that still come to our post-game and just troll us. But it's nice because it's like we gained some real followers. So
that happens.
You can
we
find
do
us
that.
on CLNS Media, and all my writing is on Celtics blog. So if you're curious about Celtics, you can always find some new stuff there.
Awesome. Thank you, Noah, for joining me. And thank you to everybody for tuning in to another edition of the Knicks Film School Pregame Show. If you dug it, leave a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. If you're watching on YouTube, please like this video. Remember to subscribe. All socials, Knick Film School, SKOOL. And of course, if you're looking for bonus content, check out our Patreon, check out our Substack. Jonathan Macri, he's got his daily newsletter. Benji and DJ dropping extra bonus content on Patreon. I will be back, not tomorrow, to preview the Hornets. I just did a Hornets pod last week, and I'm not talking about them again. So if you want a preview of the Charlotte Hornets, please go check out my episode last week with my buddy from the Buzzbeat podcast. But I'll be back on Friday to preview the Knicks Film School. I will be back on Friday to preview the Knicks game against the Utah Jazz. First time I've had the chance to talk about the Jazz in a while, so we'll talk to you then. But until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the game tonight, and I'll speak with you soon. Peace. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Connecticut, call 888-789-7777. Massachusetts, call 800-327-5050. New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY. Maryland, visit mdgamblinghelp.org. Not available in all states. Terms apply. See the Fanatics Sportsbook app.